Hi guys, Dogu here with a new video, and this video will be a Shadow Priest review. It's not really a review, but like I did my first raid as a Shadow Priest in MC. My first ever raid as a Shadow Priest in Classic, just Classic. Um, and I want to say that I'm actually very surprised. Now, it's maybe because the raid wasn't really that well geared, but I didn't feel like I was behind on most boss fights. I felt also my mana was okay. I didn't have to use every single dark rune or mana pot. I also didn't have to downrank too much. The mobs, like the bosses, were dying pretty quickly, and even without world buffs, because we did lose it at Majordomo, it felt like we did pretty well. Now I'm gonna say that it has been fun playing Shadow Priest because you're actually like pressing multiple buttons. You're pressing on your Shadow Pain, Mind Flays, Mind Blast whenever it was up. I never pulled Threat because of that, because I have Salvation and I even take the minus Threat talent in Shadow. So basically, I could not take aggro from someone, which is good. And also, I felt like my damage was okay. Now, as you may see on your screen, I'm going to show you a few boss fights here and there. Um, as you may know, that Shadow Priest is not meant to be top damage. I think like if I'm last damage, it would be okay. I'm just above the tanks most likely. I'm also above like a Retribution Paladin that is in our raids. I'm also even above some warlocks in our raids, and it depends on gear most likely, because they are most likely missing, or they just simply do other things, which makes me able to do a bit more damage than them. I also have no gear, like I had no hit on my gear, so I have only the hits from my talents, and I like only had 120 shadow spell power, so it is not impressive. But I did crit for 1.6Ks on my Mind Blast, sometimes even 1.8Ks with a bit of luck and with the right debuffs. So it is frankly possible to do okay damage, and that's without world buffs, without like big consumes, without like good gear. And I think there is potential for Shadow Priest to have a good space in raids. Now, why is it? Because you have Shadow Weaving, and Shadow Weaving is something you could even do as a healer. Although you need to sacrifice probably a lot of the healing talents, but you can still do that if you want to, and you could even like put only 1 point and have a bit of luck on your application. But frankly, you don't want to spam Shadow or Pain while the people are dying as a healer. So they decided, my guild decided to run the Shadow Priest for that, because again, a 40 man, who cares? And I would be buffing the Warlocks, which are like 4 or 5 in my guild in general, like in total. So it would be beneficial for the the warlock on their shadow damage. It would be beneficial for me, because obviously the shadow balls critting gives me also a bonus on shadow damage, if I'm not mistaken, from the destruction tree. So it's a win-win situation. We have a lot of like modifiers that are there that can be helped for each other. Shadow Pain itself does good damage, and you don't need to reapply it too often, because the bosses are dying very quickly. So that's a positive, because your mana is actually eaten alive for every single Shadow Pain you're going to do, and often again, you are going to spam Mind Flays pretty fast to get those stacks very much up, so you could then blast with your team, your whole group or raid onto the bosses. So I find also that having an extra priest is always going to be welcome for Fear Ward. Fear Ward is something very valuable for raids in general, especially as a dwarf. And also, it feels, again, that's, don't quote on me, it feels like since the debuff limit is gone, the bosses are dying pretty quickly. like for everything, right? Like everyone puts their dots whenever they can, or at least if it's like in the right rotation, it doesn't like eat your mana or it doesn't eat your damage. Like for example, Serpent Sting, you can like throw it whenever you can as a hunter because then you have times where you're not casting anything. So you can do a Serpent Sting. It will do a bit of damage, but if you have like 3 hunters doing Serpent Stings, you have like a priest doing a Shadow Word Pain, you have maybe 4 warlocks doing Corruption or whatever, it actually adds up. And the bosses are dying pretty quickly without even like good consumes, without even good wall buffs, because we didn't pop wall buffs because we were still doing the Daos quest, so we didn't want to lose the wall buffs on duration, while we did lose it when we did pop it. So it was a bit silly, but it is what it is. But I feel like it makes it possible to play specs that are maybe not very good at scaling. And I think, again, don't quote me on this, I think the only reason that Shadow Priest doesn't scale well with like raids and gear is because crit is kind of insignificant except for Mind Blast. You have your Shadow Word Pain and you have your Mind Flay, which both are not critable. So basically, the things that work is good for Frost Mages and Warlocks right now is whenever they're critting, they crit very hard. And they have longer cast times, but they crit very hard, so that compensates. We can crit very hard on Mind Blast, but Mind Blast is not something that you can spam. It's like every 6 seconds if you have the taunt. So it's not that bad, but it's obviously not going to be on the same level as a Warlock or a Mage. If dots were critable though, I think Shadow Priest would be really, really good. Like, I think it would be, like, very good even, because your damage is very, very fast. Like, Mind Flays ticks very fast. Your Shadow Pain takes every 3 seconds. Your Mind Blast hurts a lot for just a very fast cast. If it could crit, it would be very high. One thing to note as well is that Shadow Priest has a lot of utility as well, because again you have buffs, which again you most likely have another priest to buff, so that's not a problem. But it's also quite sturdy, and you can also off heal. So sometimes I off healed some bosses where I feel like, oh damn, our healers have no mana, I have still mana, we have only 1 tank left, a few DPSs are like still alive. I was then healing, I was just not doing too much damage, I was just doing my healing stuff, so we could just clear the bosses very quickly. And it was like a pug, it was like a half guild, half bug kind of raid. And it went very well, although I didn't really get a piece, unfortunately. Lost Toeb in 1v1, so I rolled 37, I think that guy rolled 88. So that kind of sucked. But again, I wanted to have Toeb because I feel like with loot console it will be very hard for a Shadow Priest to get it. And with this SR possibility, getting Toeb would be like, wow. Like you're set pretty much. You don't need to like beg for the loot console to consider you on a few pieces. Now, there's one thing that should be said is that if you want to deal more damage, like way more damage, you should actually play Smite Priest because it scales a lot better with with spell power. Although it's very hard to get those spell power because you cannot really rely on shadow spell power. You have to have general spell power because you don't have holy spell power, right? You only have one modifier, which is Seal of Crusade on the boss from the paladin. And you still need to beg a paladin to do so. And then you can pump very hard. Like I already critted for 1k at level 56 with a Seal of Crusade without any spell power. So I imagine with like spell power, with like your wall buffs, it could actually do a lot of damage. But that aside, the thing is why you don't really run a Smite Priest is because you don't really give any benefits towards Warlock. So it's a very selfish spec where you could also off heal, but it's very selfish in a sense where you don't provide anything towards the raid. You only provide maybe your buffs if you don't have another priest, and what else? You provide maybe off heals if you have like difficulties with surviving on certain encounters. You can say, look, I can just heal, But as the Smite Priest, you could also have dual spec and go Disc Priest or go Holy Priest, like without going Smite, to be able to do that. So that's also a possibility. I didn't have to respec or dual spec on encounters. They said like, look, go Shadow Priest, play Shadow Priest, do your thing. And what I did is also I put a Vampiric Embrace, so I could also heal my allies, although it's very little. It's like 55 per tick on Shadow Pain and Mind Flay. So every single time it ticks, it will heal 55 on the whole raid, whole party, excuse me, and it will tick. So it's quite good, but it does a lot of threat. But again, with Salvation and with your threat talent, it's all right. And we did well. And then you have also Fade. You could also Fade out of the stuff. So I just Fade sometimes to just like be sure that it's not going to go on me. I do feel like it has value. I'm not going to talk 30 minutes about Shadow Priest. I think if you want to bring one Shadow Priest, I think it's very fine. I think it's very respectable. And also, since Warlocks are very good levelers, you're going to probably see a lot more Warlocks right now compared to Warriors, Paladins, Mages. Mages, no. But I mean, like, you know what I mean. Like, every single DPS that has a bit of struggle with leveling. Warlocks are one of them that are going to be quite fast, level 60. So you could then bring them in your raid. And if you have like 4 Warlocks, it actually makes sense to put a Shadow Priest in your raid to be able to have Shadow Weaving. So since debuff limit is gone, you should be using it. Now you could also ask a Disc Priest if they go Disc Priest. You could always ask them to go for Shadow Weaving. So you have like 31 points for PI. And then you get like 20 points into Shadow Priest. So you could have Void Weaving. That itself is possible, but then you ask a healer to use 5 globals, because that's basically it. You use 5 globals on Mind Flays or Shadow Word Pain, or both, to be able to get that Shadow Weaving up, which is fine, but you lose like 1.5 seconds times 5 the amount. So it's like, again, 8 seconds you're going to lose. Am I mistaken? 7.5 seconds that you're going to lose on just purely using your DPS spells instead of healing. So I personally prefer to have a Shadow Priest because it has damage first and foremost. It's not bad damage. I'm not going to put the logs, but I am not last. I think I had like, again, it's not fantastic, but I also have no gear, guys. I have like 300 DPS, I think, something like that, between 250 and 300 DPS, which is not great. Like, let's face it, our warriors had like 600, 650, so you have half of a warrior. But without gear, because I have like healing gear on, right? I have nothing, not even read, nothing. And I have also like purely no consumes, no world buffs. So obviously, once we have like everything lined up, I'm gonna make a video about it, and I'm gonna show you some true logs from me as a Shadow Priest with like everything up, like world buffs, consumes, gearing, and then we're going to compare it with those 2 logs together and the difference between them. But anyways, I'm very glad of having raided as a Shadow Priest. It's actually very fun. More fun than healing, in my opinion, so I'm very blessed to get that opportunity in the guild. It's also a very good, like a very, I would say, community-driven guild, so it's enjoyable to have that as well. Yeah, so if anything, if you want to have my opinion on a different class, let me know. I will be leveling a different class. I frankly hesitate between a class that can actually farm very well and also PvP very well, or a class that is a bit more in demand in raids or in dungeons or just in PvP as well. So it's between Warrior, they weren't very big in demand, Paladin, which is like, again, I would most likely go healer in raids. I could also go ret. I think in our guilds they are like a bit open to that, so I'm very glad. Like, for example, we have a ret in our guild. He played ret, and he plays tanks in dungeons, so he's very appreciated by the guild, which is very cool. Like, he even got like a piece, so I'm very happy for him. And his damage was not great, but he was like off healing. He was using his bobs, so he was there to support, and that's quite cool as well. I could like play paladin, why not? But that's like semi grind because you can AoE grind a bit, and semi in demand, and it's not that great DPS wise, so I don't know if I really want it. I could also level a mage for just like, again, I could get some gold via AoE farming, or like even boosting people. Although I don't really care about that, but getting gold is quite like important. Or I could just do a hunter, that will be my gold farming machine. But even then, I don't know if I really want to do tribal runs. Like I didn't really like it on my hunter in 2019, so I don't know. We'll have to see. So if you have like something you can propose to me, I'll be open to that. Again, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.